StreamYard's taking a minute. There we go. We are live. I am Chris, the host of Crash Canon, and today we have a guest I've actually met in person. So, who are you, and what do you do?
Who am I? What do I do? Well, my name is Christian Wagner. I run a YouTube channel, and it's called Scholastic Answers. I do a variety of different content, usually theological, church, some church politics stuff. I'll go over, whatever Pope Leo is teaching. I do those pretty frequently. I do Q&As, answer people's questions. Just a variety of different things with Catholic theology. That's about it.
Actually, it's funny. The first time I discovered your videos, I think it was somebody trying to say like, "This guy stinks," and I was like, I watched the videos, like, "No, he doesn't. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, I do have my fair share of haters. I don't know where it comes from. I have my haters from the Protestant world, the Orthodox world, the Sedevacantist world, from the Libcath world, from the conservative Catholic, but not my type of conservative Catholic world. I do have my fair share for sure.
Yeah, it is really odd because really what you do is you inform people. So I'm not sure how you can inform people and develop haters, but it is what it is.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a jerk, so I kind of get it. I don't just inform people, but I like to kind of make it a little bit entertaining, and sometimes that you step on people's shoes with that stuff.
That's fair. There is a certain bald-headed creator that we're not going to get into today, but I know what you're saying.
I'm trying to think of who you're talking about.
A certain individual that likes to talk about lawyers. Anyway, so we have a lot of people in the chat today, so I'm going to be putting people on the screen. But in the meantime, while we're getting to talk about this, I did meet some of your friends. One of them was on Pints with Aquinas. Is your story pretty similar to his?
Are you talking about Ethan?
Yeah.
We went to Ethan and I. Anybody who's interested in kind of like a really, really full exposition of it, they can watch Ethan Dolan's interview on Pints with Aquinas. He mentioned me by name a few times, then a few times implicitly. I talked about this a lot with Brian Holdsworth, which just released tonight. So sorry for taking a little bit of the share from this stream with people watching that one that just came out. Ethan and I's story is very similar. We went to college together. We were studying theology together, and we really got interested in scholastic theology. We started studying St. Thomas. We started studying, like the Catechism of the Catholic Church. We'd be studying a bunch of random things, kind of because we didn't really have much direction. We were just, God was shooting straight with crooked arrows there because we really had no idea what we were doing, and we ended up converting. He converted before me. I converted a few months later. I was a little bit more stubborn there.
And you guys had pretty similar, though. Like you guys got kicked out of the university around the same time.
Actually the same day. No, he got kicked out the day before I got kicked out, I think.
Okay. Because I listened to the Pines interview back when I met him, like on the way home. I had a 4-hour drive home from Steubenville, so I was like, all right, I'm going to listen to this interview that he did, and it was super interesting. Like it's kind of crazy how God uses these different things to get people into the church, and I just found the whole story fascinating because I had actually no idea that was you guys that interview was, and then I was like, oh man, I met the guy that was on Pints talking about getting kicked out of it was Baptist college, right? The R.C. Sproul and all that.
Oh no, it's not Baptist. It's
not Baptist. What is it?
It was Reformed.
Reformed. I'm sorry, Reformed. My apologies. But yeah, that's nuts. Okay, so what about Thomism? How did you get into Thomism, and why Walmart Thomist on Twitter?
Yeah, so it actually connects with my story of getting kicked out of school because at that time I was working at an Anglican parish. I was doing their youth catechesis. I was helping out with the liturgy. I was doing everything like that. And I got kicked out of school. I kept, I wanted, when I got kicked out of school, I wasn't a Roman Catholic yet. I was still a decided Protestant. So I still wanted to pursue Anglican holy orders. Well, holy orders. I still wanted to pursue that. So I, decided to put my head down and keep on with my formation. And then eventually when I converted, it was obvious that I couldn't just stay as an Anglican seminarian. I couldn't just sit there and, continue on that way. I couldn't just keep working in Anglican parish as a Roman Catholic. So I made the decision, this was around a month after my son was born. So I had to make a decision, what was I going to do? So I decided to move back up north. I was in Florida at the time. And, as somebody with a theology background and as a recent convert, there's not that many job opportunities. So new kid, was married. So I had to make money. So what did I do? I did what I had worked in high school and actually in college as well. And I applied for Walmart and I got a job doing overnight stocking.
Overnight stocking. Okay.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough. Like were you doing YouTube when you were overnight stocking still, or was that okay? So you were doing the YouTube
that's
thing?
when I got my start. A lot of it's kind of funny. I was doing overnight stocking, and during that time, it actually gave me a lot of time to read. So that's really when I got into listening to voice to speech, getting very used to voice to speech voices and reading and studying in that way. I started listening to, I wasn't really actually listening to much YouTube, but I listened to some YouTube during that time. But a lot of talking with people who were interested in theology, I got introduced to a lot of stuff, hanging out Discord VCs, theology Discord, and talking with a lot of people, discovering and learning new things. And that really shaped, my positions on a lot of things. I met some of my best friends during that time. And really that's when I went from a sort of naive Thomism, because I had known about scholasticism since high school, and I had been reading certain Protestant scholastics. And when I was in college, I started reading St. Thomas, and I, wasn't really exposed a lot to the very complex scholastic tradition, like the commentators on St. Thomas. I wasn't really exposed to that actually until I started talking with a lot of online internet Catholics who were just interested in theology, and they started introducing me to all these people. I had no idea who they were. At that time, I'd taken a little bit of Latin, but I didn't really know Latin too well. I'd taken Greek and Hebrew in college, and that was really my linguistic experience. So I needed to kind of lock down, study Latin as much as I could, because I really wanted to read these people. Because what they had translated, some of these people had translated portions for me. I read it and I thought that this was just awesome stuff, and I was really excited to get into it. So at that point, got a lot more study in Latin, so I could read a lot of this stuff for myself. And I really just started locking in and reading more and more and more, and expanding as I could. And then with any time that I had left, I would write articles, post on Twitter, make videos. Yeah. And stuff like that. But it really wasn't that much in the beginning, for sure.
So what, when did you, I guess maybe a better question to start this then would be, when did you get through the Summa? Have you ever read the Summa all the way through?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you suggest people approach that?
I mean, the first time I read through it, I think I have it written on the inside of my copy of Prima Pars, of my completion date, but it would have been 2021.
Did you do that in a year, several months? How long did it take you to get through?
I mean, the first time it took several months. It was a very bad reading through. Since then, I kind of got into the habit of, reading usually around 10 to 15 articles a day will take you through it, with a few skip days and around a year. So that's what I like to keep pacing wise. But it really just depends on what part of the Summa. I mean, for most people, if they want to read the Summa, that's not a beginner text. It's not where they should be starting. Even though it's funny, a lot of people don't know this, but if you go to the prologue, I don't have my Prima Pars here, my Prima Secundae though. But if they go to the prologue of the Summa and you read the beginning, it says that, this is a text for beginners. But when St. Thomas is talking about beginners, what he means by that is beginners in their studies in scholastic theology. Yeah. So for a medieval bachelor student, the way in which they would go through their theological study, they would obviously have, their catechesis growing up. So they would know a bunch of theology just from that, from, just living a Catholic life in a Catholic environment throughout their entire lives. But then they would go through a period of the sort of trivium, quadrivium, that sort of training when they were young. Probably up until around the age of 12 and 13, they would be studying those sorts of topics.
Okay.
And then after that point, they would go into their liberal arts training, which would include much more extensive training in philosophy. So by the point you were getting to the Summa in that environment, not that it was actually used in the classroom during this time, but by that point, at least from what St. Thomas was expecting, you would have already had a background, a pretty solid background in the liberal arts and a pretty solid background in philosophy. So, I mean, for most people, if they are asking like, okay, well, thank you for all the yap, but how do I kind of myself do it? I think a good place is to definitely check out a video that I had done, I think around 2 weeks ago. It was sort of like where to start with theology or where to start with Thomism, something like that, where there's actually a lot of works from St. Thomas beside the Summa that are meant for beginners to read. So if you're a
Is the Summa
beginner,
of the Summa one of his, or is that something that was
Summa of the
created later?
Summa, I mean, that is depending on which Summa of the Summa you're talking
Fair,
about,
fair.
because there's like a Latin, a French, multiple English versions with
Yeah,
the same name. But basically, the Summa of the Summa is usually in reference to different texts that were written by certain compilers who wanted to
okay,
simplify this text of St. Thomas. I don't suggest reading those things just for the sole reason that there's a lot of editorial bias that goes into those. And
sure.
often they're more shaped by what the author thinks is important in St. Thomas than what St. Thomas himself thinks is important. So really what I would suggest doing is going through a lot of those easier works that are meant for beginners in theology. So, for example, St. Thomas wrote various catechetical texts. He wrote a commentary on the Apostles' Creed, 10 Commandments, Hail Mary. He wrote small works on the sacraments, the Articles of the Faith. He wrote commentaries on Scripture, which I've found beginners are usually able to dive into, especially those who are familiar with Scripture. He wrote a lot of different texts like this. You kind of just have to, and this is the issue that I wanted to resolve by making that video. What you kind of have to have is you have to have a person who's able to point with your finger, with my finger, I guess in this case, but to point with their finger to which works are the ones that are going to be easy for you. So for somebody out there with almost no training, reading through St. Thomas's commentary on the Apostles' Creed, it gives them a degree of confidence where they're able to say, wow, I'm reading St. Thomas, and this is really helpful. I'm really able to understand the Catholic faith. Maybe they're even reading this next to their normal catechesis, reading through the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So yeah, for people who want to go out there and say, oh, I'm going to read through the Summa, it was dumb for me to do that. I should have started in other places. You definitely want to start with those easier works that are proportioned to your understanding, for sure.
Yeah, my intention is not next year, but the year after, so it'll be 2027. I'm laying out a reading plan for myself to get through the Summa in the year, because that is one of the works that's on my list of works I need to get through. I've read a lot of the early church fathers at this point, and I'm ready to start doing more deeper theology. So that'll be on my list for probably 2027. I might make a shorter list of Thomas Aquinas books in 2026, but we have a baby due and other things, and I know that I won't get through the Summa if I try to do it in 2026.
Yeah, I
So
think one of the most important works for like the beginner level is a work of his called the Compendium Theologiae. It just means compendium of theology. He actually wrote this for a lay brother who was basically his scribe. He wrote it for him because even the guy who was St. Thomas's assistant, funnily enough, wasn't a theological genius. He was kind of just a friend of his who was a lay brother. And he asked him like, hey, I want to understand more of what you're saying and what basically what he was sitting and writing for St. Thomas. Kind of funny. So he was like, hey, I want to understand more of what you're actually trying to communicate. So could you write me basically a handbook of theology, a small little handbook with, short explanations and arguments that I myself could understand and read. And that's what ended up becoming the Compendium Theologiae. Unfortunately, he died in the midst of the beginning of the second book, which is on the theological virtue of hope. But the first book is on the theological virtue of faith. So he goes through the doctrine of the faith pretty comprehensively and discusses a lot of the more complex topics he discusses in other areas of his work that take up multiple pages. He'll discuss it in a paragraph. And really, it's one of the best syntheses of theology ever written. I think it is the best, actually, on par with like the Breviloquium of St. Bonaventure or the Enchiridion of St. Augustine. It's just such an amazing work. One of my favorites for sure.
We do have, I just want to, since it is my stream, but we're doing it dual stream. I just want to shout out your buddy here who gave you 5 Scholastic Answers memberships.
Oh, so, Mors Ultra. Mors Ultra is awesome. We love him.
So I just want to make sure that didn't get missed. That's all. All right. So the next question I have for you, it seems like Gen Z is like super embracing Thomism. It seems like a lot of the biggest up and coming Thomists are all Gen Z. Is there any particular reason you think that Gen Z is interested in Thomism? Like is it a rigid thing? Is it a faith thing? Is it like just because it's got stronger religious tones? What is it about Thomism that seems to appeal to Gen Z?
Well, I actually don't think it's particularly I don't think it's particularly Thomism. I think that a lot of them are embracing scholasticism, but I would
Okay.
say that even with a lot of the up and coming Gen Zers, I myself am probably one of the only ones who's really a strict observance Thomist.
Okay.
Really kind of
What does that mean?
formed in order. Sorry, what?
What does that exactly mean when you say strict tone? Like what was the word you used?
Oh, strict observance Thomist. Yeah.
Strict
So
observance.
when it comes to scholasticism, scholasticism is really not as much a lot of people will confuse it for maybe a time period of some sort. Like we would talk about the fathers, we would talk about the
Sure.
scholastics. But really what scholasticism is it's a certain method. So
Okay.
this is why I can even talk about Protestant scholastics, or even there's actually some Eastern Orthodox scholastics, funnily enough. Or you could have sometimes people even speak about Jewish scholastics like Maimonides or Muslim scholastics. But scholasticism is really a method. And it's a
Okay.
method that of a sort of systematic presentation of the truths of the faith interconnected with one another, drawing out their consequences, doing all of those things. And by of the faith, obviously, when it comes to Protestants, Muslims, and Jews, they don't have the faith, but they have some sort of presentation of what they imagine to be divine revelation. So really scholasticism is a certain method. And when it comes to scholasticism, there's kind of two schools of thought. On the one hand, there are those who are of the strict observance. So those who are of the strict observance, they can be strict observant Scotists, strict observance Bonaventurians, Aegidians, Thomists. There's a lot of different schools of this, but basically,
But that would all be under scholasticism?
yeah, they would all be under
Okay.
scholasticism. So with the strict observance guys, what they want is they want to follow the teaching of a certain master, and not only the teaching of a certain master, but also the school which follows that master. So there's St. Thomas, and then there's generations after him, such as Capriolus, Cayetanus. Everybody knows who Domingo Banez is. There's a lot of different authors who are following in the Dominican order St. Thomas, who are dedicated to St. Thomas as their teacher. So you can have Franciscans who are strict observance Scotus. Then on the other hand, outside of the strict observance crowd, there's also what are called the eclectics. So they still follow the scholastic method, but really their idea is they kind of don't want to follow necessarily one master super strictly. All of them are in agreement that St. Thomas has a certain primacy of honor, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah.
He has a certain primacy in that everyone holds to. He's a sort of ecumenical figure amongst the schools like that. The Scotus have a certain, the Franciscans have a certain adoration for St. Thomas. The Dominicans do, the Jesuits do, the Augustinians do. He's a doctor for every single school, but that doesn't mean that they strictly follow him in every opinion. So the eclectics, while having, maybe a tendency towards one or another author, and they have that honor for St. Thomas, but really what they want to do is they kind of want to synthesize multiple different opinions into, their own sort of personal synthesis. Still, obviously, adhering to the truths of the faith, the teaching of the magisterium, the common consensus of the schools, and everything like that. So for me personally, a lot of those guys out there, they're usually eclectics. Pretty commonly, they're eclectics in the way in which they think.
That makes
But
sense.
for me, I'm a strict observance Thomist. I follow St. Thomas and the school of Dominican commentators on St. Thomas.
And what is nice about St. Thomas Aquinas, from what I've read on my own, is that he seems to have answers that can apply to almost everything, which is something you don't find in every single school of thought. Whereas
that's
you can kind of
sort of
apply what he's written to almost anything you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a point that St. John Henry Newman makes when it comes to Catholicism. Catholicism has this certain power of being able to go and apprehend outside of itself things which contain error, obviously, or things which are, basically within maybe the Greco-Roman world or even within certain Eastern traditions. And it's able to take that and find maybe what's useful to apply to our understanding of the world. It's able to distinguish truth from error. It's able to distinguish what's unhelpful from what's helpful. And in a similar way, Saint Thomas and Thomism, they're really able to do this when it comes to the natural sciences and the way in which we're able to understand the Catholic faith better, and then also all of reality as well. There's a certain power of apprehension that it has.
Now, I do know that a lot of what, at least the method used by Thomas Aquinas in his writing, according to what I've read, is very Aristotelian. Have you read a lot of Aristotle?
No.
No. Do you feel like it would be worthwhile?
I think really, I think it's I have read enough Aristotle. I mean, the metaphysics, his logical works, parts of the physics, the politics, not really his ethics actually, but
really,
I have
skipped the ethics.
No, I did skip the ethics. But really, what I've found to be, I mean, I've read like the bits and pieces, insofar as authors will refer to them and like, refer here to learn about this or that. But really, what I've found myself is that Aristotle is first in line as a brilliant trailblazer when it comes to philosophy. Really, when one looks at the pre-Aristotelian figures and compares them to Aristotle, has a powerful mind of synthesis, and he's just able to set the conversation for generations to come. But when it comes to philosophy, I don't have any sort of religious adherence to Aristotle and what Aristotle says. I have a religious adherence to Aristotle as he is received within the Catholic schools, as he is explained by St. Thomas and his students, etc. So I will read, a manual of philosophy. Let's say Grenier, for example, is Thomistic philosophy. I'll read a manual of philosophy that will basically give me everything that Aristotle says, explained in ways that are more intuitive, explained in ways that are more in line with the way in which Catholic authors speak, clarifying errors that he might make here and there, bringing in the insights of the later tradition. So I don't really have the same adherence to Aristotle as a lot of people do. And I think with a lot of people, what they'll try to do is they'll try to go and read through all of the works of Aristotle. I mean, I have on my shelf somewhere, I think that is actually a volume of Aristotle. I have Aristotle on my shelf, and I'll read him, but I don't have the same sort of necessity to read everything Aristotle ever wrote in order to understand St. Thomas.
Does St. Thomas Aquinas have something you could apply to the modern, the impact of feminism on the church? I'm just curious.
St. Thomas on the impact of feminism in the church?
I'm curious if he has anything that would apply to that. I am curious.
I would say
it's been like really like a hardcore topic online lately with like feminism, its impact, and that kind of stuff. So I'm just curious if you have anything from an Aquinas perspective on feminism.
Well, I mean, uniquely from St. Thomas, he's just going to really replicate what sacred scripture and the fathers have already said. I don't, off the top of my head, on this topic in particular, the overbearance of women when given abundance of freedom, I don't think St. Thomas really, off the top of my head, ever wrote anything really extensive on this.
Interesting. I was curious because obviously feminism would not have been anything in the lingo. There was no such thing as feminism at the time of Thomas Aquinas, or there may have been stuff.
Well, I think that
like,
actually, if you wanted to, I think that's actually a very common misunderstanding of world history in relation to women. There's a good.
What I mean is like the feminist movement did not exist. There were clearly people that would have been of a feminist nature.
Yeah,
you had women that have had that problem for the entirety of the human race. So
ever since Eve. But there is something good from St. Albert the Great, obviously St. Thomas's teacher. He wrote pretty extensively on women. There's a certain pseudo Albert work called On the Secrets of Women, which is a kind of a funny work, but that's not actually on the same topic. But St. Albert, I believe in his commentary on Aristotle's work on the distinction of animals, I think it might be off the top of my head, St. Albert has a lot of very important insights into women. And it's really funny. He makes the point that women really, what they fundamentally desire is women desire, like all creatures, perfection. And therefore, women are always going to desire to be men. And this is kind of
That's
going back
interesting.
to Genesis, where there's the curse on Eve, and it says that she will always desire, the headship of her husband, and she'll always desire to have an overbearing role over her husband. That's really Eve, the curse on women, that they will always desire to, be men in this way and not be content with what they have. So, yeah, I mean, I would say if you wanted to look at medieval commentaries on women and the bad effects of women, my friend Hassan, he's done a lot on this and he's collected a lot of texts on this. But this would really be from St. Albert.
Yeah, that is all interesting. I'm glad you brought up Eve though, because I want to talk about Genesis 3:15 specifically. I asked this to a lot of people. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it, because most of the early church, I know it's not every single person in the early church, believe Genesis 3:15 was talking about the woman, because she will crush the serpent's head. Do you have a particular take on Genesis 3:15, whether it's he or she, and if so, why?
I mean, I don't have a specific linguistic reason for this. I think that, at least from my understanding of Hebrew grammar, each one of them, depending on the context, could actually be the correct translation. I actually, just because I'm a bit of a retrograde, I actually favor the she, just because, I trust. Be honest, I trust Saint Jerome and his ability to translate
Same.
more than modern, Hebrew scholars, just because there's a certain intuitiveness that comes from a sort of living apprehension of the language closer to the time of authorship, that I
Yeah,
think is just
absolutely.
invaluable, rather than all of these weird sort of reconstructions that often happen. So somebody sent me, funnily enough, I just saw the message come up on my computer. Somebody sent me one of these quotes from St. Albert. He says, quote, "Therefore, to speak briefly," and this is the conclusion to his whole comments on women. "Therefore, to speak briefly, one must be as mistrustful of every woman as of a venomous serpent and a horned devil. And if it were allowed to say what I know about women, it would stupefy the entire world."
That's an awesome quote. My goodness.
Yeah, so I'm gonna add that into the chat in case anybody wants to use it.
That sounds great. So I do have another. Maybe I'll just walk you through my thought process on Genesis 3:15. I think that the reason you don't see "he shall crush the serpent's head," at least prominently, until the Protestant Reformation, is because of the faith alone issue. Because if "he shall crush the serpent's head," then Protestantism could easily say, "Oh, that's our proto-evangelion, right? That says Jesus is going to do it. All I need is faith." If it's she, we're talking about the bride of Christ. We're talking about the church. The church is going to have to assist Jesus in the crushing of the serpent's head. The gates of hell shall not prevail. So in my mind, if it's not she, it makes less sense.
Yeah, I don't know about your theory.
You don't have to know. I'm just, that's kind of my thought process. I think the reason it switches to he in the English language during the Protestant Reformation is specifically an anti-Catholic thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to look into.
Yeah, I get it. You got to dig into it, but that's my thought process anyway. Okay. Next question: is there a reason why? And maybe you don't have an answer for this, but there's a reason that like everybody tries to claim your fan base is all groypers. I don't necessarily believe that, but I see that a lot online. They're like, Christian Wagner's whole audience is groypers. I'm like, I don't think that's the truth. I think there's a decent chunk of them that are out loud online, but I don't think the biggest chunk of your audience is actually groypers.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like it's sort of like the way in which a leftist will speak of all right wingers as fascists, or
Right.
even they will talk about, for example, they will say that National Socialists are fascists. That's extremely imprecise way of speaking. Or you'll get it on the right wing. They'll speak of anybody who's not a free market capitalist as somehow a socialist. It comes from a sort of boomer misunderstanding of the right wing, to where if you have a non-conventional view of Israel and you have these you're a race realist, and
For the
you have,
record,
you have
I
these,
do like the groypers. Pine Sap's a friend of mine.
oh
I,
yeah,
I don't
so
want anybody to think I'm like dogging the groypers. I don't have a problem with the groypers. That's just for the record.
yeah, so what they'll say is they'll confuse basically these sort of notions of I have this view on race, and I have this view on the nation, and I have this view on Israel, I have this view on foreign policy. And what they'll say is that if you believe these things, then you are a groyper. But really, when it comes to the phenomenon of groyperism is not simply a axiomatic set of beliefs. It's
No, it
also a
definitely isn't.
personal adherence to Nick as a certain authority in the way in which one both speculatively and practically thinks about politics. So like me, for example, I probably agree with Nick more than, most political commentators, probably almost any other popular political commentator. But
Your
I wouldn't
favorite
call
one is
myself a
James
groyper.
Lindsay, though, right?
Hmm?
Your
James
favorite one is
Lindsay, yeah. So I mean, I probably wouldn't
just kidding.
call myself a groyper, though, because
Yeah.
I don't have, I would say, some sort of unique adhesion to things that Nick says, even though I agree with him about a lot. So a lot of times people will look at my fan base and, okay, they say these things, they make these jokes, therefore they must be groypers. That's really just an imprecise use of language. It's really an imprecise use of categories. And in the same way, you could call me a socialist or me a fascist or something like that.
I
Just
would
because
not
I'm not
refer
a
to you as either
capitalist,
of
and
those things,
I
for the record.
I'm a right winger. Yeah,
The Catholic Church does not specifically endorse any particular political system.
yeah,
It's
true.
just
This is true.
so to me, it's like I don't care if it's a monarchy, a capitalist society, whatever is going to let the most Catholics live peaceably within it. I'm pretty much on board with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of the issues that we have in a lot of the political discourse amongst Catholics is it's not pragmatic enough. A
Yeah.
lot of people want to turn this into a sort of like autistic circular firing squad sort of thing where we're going to adhere really strongly to really what end up being practical choices where neither of the means are necessarily evil or necessarily good, but rather it's a question of what is actually going to most effectively bring out the common good. Very clearly, if we had a disagreement where what I am advocating for is per se good, what you're advocating for is per se evil, we can and you should disagree with that.
Yeah.
And you should disagree with that very strongly. And you shouldn't allow this to be a thing where, we're just going to pretend like it's not an issue. But, if we're both advocating for sort of a plan and both of them, they're only evil or good insofar as they're ordered to an evil or good end, we should be able to have room for agreement or disagreement for those and be able to discuss and dialogue for whichever option is going to best bring about the common good.
I really like that answer, actually. Here's a super chat on your side. I don't know if you want to answer it now or wait till later. It says
Thoughts on Adrian Vermeule and Common Good Constitutionalism. Any good Catholic or American legal theory book you would recommend? Yeah, I don't really. I had that on my reading list. Actually, I wanted to dive into different opinions on constitutional theory and different jurisprudential approaches to American law from Catholic authors, but I haven't really gotten too deeply into it, so I can't really give too intelligent of an answer, so I apologize.
We have another.
But he follows me on Twitter, so I guess that counts.
We have another super chat immediately following that. Can you do defense of hylomorphism? I don't know if that's misspelled. It might be morphism. Yeah. And then moderate realism. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so hylomorphism, this is the idea that hylo, this basically means matter, and then morph, that more like it's kind of like a shape, like you morph something into something. So that's form.
Sure.
So basically that things contain both matter and form. And if you want a defense of hylomorphism or moderate realism, then you can look at basically any single book of book of scholastic philosophy that goes over, in a systematic way, all of the different disciplines. So you could go and read Grenier's Thomistic philosophy, or you could go and could you keep that up?
Oh yeah, I can.
Or you could go and you could read Monsignor Glenn, his work on ontology. You could read works like that, and they'll provide full defenses. But basically, the reason that we posit matter and form is because when we look at things around us, for example, when we look at, an apple, like I said, I had two apples in my hand. I had an apple here and an apple here. There is two principles that are contained in this apple, right? there's not a sort of unlimitedness of appleness, right?
Yeah.
There's this apple is sort of constrained, and this apple is, it's constrained into being this apple, and this apple is constrained into being this apple, right? So there is a sort of active principle and there's a passive principle. There's that principle which makes this an apple, makes it understandable. It's the active principle of this apple and the active principle of this apple. And that's really what we're going to refer to as form. And then there's also like the sort of passive principle that drags it down from being a sort of like the universal apple and being all appleness. And that sort of passive dragging down principle, that's going to be the sort of matter in it. So it's going to be a composition of these two. And then moderate realism, this is basically, it's between two errors. The one error is going to be nominalism, and nominalism, as commonly understood, is going to say that there is, that universals are basically somehow imposed upon the world. That I'm imposing the fact that this apple is an apple and this apple is an apple. When I use that word apple, it's basically me imposing on the external world, apple, if you want to put it like that. And then on the other hand, you have sort of radical realism. And the radical realism would basically say that the form of apple is kind of like floating out there, and there is that sort of pure appleness which is out there, and it's a certain idea or form up there in some sort of external world. Now, and then between these two is actually is moderate realism. So moderate realism doesn't say that the universal exists in reality like the radical realists would say, and it also doesn't say that. It also says that the universal isn't just an imposition by our intellect. It says that it exists formally in our intellect. So it's like it actually resides in there and exists fundamentally in the thing. So it would say that we, in apprehending these two apples, actually abstract this into our intellects, and they provide the foundation out there for this universal right there. So we know that the radical realism is completely wrong. And the reason that it's wrong is because a lot of these concepts actually do contain matter. Right? You can't have pure appleness because necessarily it is going to contain matter, which is going to individuate it and distinguish it from other apples. So there's a lot of different things. Maybe we could have arguments about the universals of like truth or universals of being or things like that don't actually contain matter in their notion. There are a lot of things like apples that do contain matter in their notion. So we know that there isn't a sort of Platonic form of apple kind of floating up there in the heavens. And we also know that nominalism is wrong. And the reason that we know nominalism is wrong is pretty simple, because, when I have this concept of appleness, I actually know that this comes from my abstraction from reality, like experientially. I could experience that when I look at this apple and I look at that apple, that's just not me imposing, artificial categories on it, but it's actually the fact that under the light of reason, I am, looking at these two, and it is, the phantasms are shooting into my intellect, and I am actually abstracting universal, which is able to help me identify it. And I think what a cool proof of this is actually that if I were to tell you to imagine an apple, and you might imagine, a Granny Smith, it's green, whatever. But if I were to imagine an apple, it might be a red delicious. We have different sort of sensible images or phantasms of the apple. And that's something in which we are ourselves constructing. But when I use the term apple, that is actually expressing an idea, a universal idea abstracted from reality. And therefore, I can communicate these things to you. So idea and phantasm are different. Therefore, you must have the difference between a sort of universal and then a particular, construction and imposition. So I hope that's helpful for you, Crescent's Black.
Interesting name, that's for sure. I do have a question then. Based on what you just said, hylomorphism sounds like it's more of a question about the substance, like transubstantiation style. Is that kind of in the same realm?
Yeah, so substance, we can distinguish between primary and secondary substance.
Yeah.
So sort of the idea of substance as a universal and the idea of substance as like this substance. So when it comes to substance is something which is apt to have subsistence in itself. Like that's what a substance is. Whereas accidents are that which is apt to have subsistence in another. So you can think about the substance of apple, and the substance of apple does not exist in something else. Rather, things exist in it. So redness exists of the apple, size exists of the apple, etc. So it's a slightly distinct question because when we're talking about matter and form, we're really talking about the two fundamental principles of actuality and potency. Not technically the fundamental principles, which would be essence and existence, but that's sort of a different question. But the two principles that come together to form individuals of a species. But when it comes to substance and accidents, these are really going to be distinguishing those two principles of that which is apt to exist in itself versus in another right there. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
That makes sense. We're getting super chats like crazy on your side, so I don't know if you want to address this one right now, or seems like it probably is an easy one to quickly address.
Oh yeah, it isn't really an easy one to quickly. I mean, I could give like my opinion right there, but like a long explanation would be pretty difficult. So yeah, Henry de Lubac and then Hans von Balthasar. So
isn't he the Dare We Hope guy?
Yeah, I like to call it Dare We Cope because I think
Dare We Cope.
Yeah, so both of them, I guess my TLDR that I'll give you guys is they came from an era of theology that gave them a lot of tools to be able to do a lot of good historical work, synthetic work, be able to look and have access to a lot of resources that previous generations didn't have access to. So therefore, they were very encyclopedic in their presentations of things, which I think was very helpful. And even scholastics before and after the Second Vatican Council quoted these authors on that merit. But they also, because of this, were very eclectic and very creative, and they came up with a lot of new theories. So in that sense, I'm not really a fan of, novel theories that they're putting forward that I find to be unconvincing at best, and at worst, maybe in contradiction to a significant part of the tradition. But usually with those authors, 98% of what they write is pretty benign and is kind of just what everybody else holds to, which is pretty typical for Catholic authors. In their writings, usually most of what they write is kind of agreed upon stuff. And then, the 2% is their novelty of their own that they're kind of putting into it. And if they're not doing that, and it's a lot of just their own sort of speculations, then they're probably not too good of an author.
You do have one more before we roll back into my questions, but says there the Catholic defense of ransom or redemption theory of atonement.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Those are kind of like modern categories imposed upon the tradition in like a historical theology way, and not really ways in which Catholic authors will usually speak about the atonement.
Actually, so somebody put a question in the chat, and actually this is something interesting I wanted to ask you about. There's like these theories and pieces that used to kind of be held within universities, institutions, etc. Like, for example, the idea that there could be a somebody saved with perfect ignorance or whatever.
Invincible ignorance.
Invincible ignorance, yes. What's your thought on things kind of escaping the institution, going to the general public? I mean, we got Amazon now. You can buy pretty much any book on anything you want, and somebody's publishing it. Do you think it's good for the average person to have access to this kind of information where they might get a false or a bad theology from reading something that's actually a good discussion, like, for example, Invincible Ignorance?
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point. It's an observation that I've made with a few people that I think that, yes, the discussions around the extent of salvation outside of the sort of outward boundaries of membership in the church, that discussion is far before Vatican II. Like, that discussion was happening, I would argue in the patristic age. Some people don't find that convincing, but definitely was happening in the medieval church. So it's far beyond Vatican II modern, whatever you want to call it. So those discussions are happening for a very long time, but those discussions were really happening in the academy. And It was happening in the university between theologians, and your average person would not even, have an idea about invincible ignorance or anything like this.
Sure.
And personally, my firmly held opinion, is that it was a bit of a mistake for us to let the cat out of the bag and start discussing these with random, individuals who may get false conclusions about this or may not be able to understand it, may be scandalized by it. Really, I think the message simply ought to be, if you are not joined to the Catholic Church before the end of your life, you're going to hell. And that should just be the statement. And you should just state that very clearly, and providing qualifications and distinctions and nuance with your sort of average person, it almost always leads to a degree of misunderstanding. And I think it almost necessarily moves towards a degree of indifferentism about the necessity of the Catholic Church for salvation, and the idea that heretics, schismatics, apostates, Jews, Muslims, that they can all have a sort of reasonable hope for salvation, which is just absurd.
Well, especially in the modern age where almost every person has the ability to look up any of these things. If you really want to research God, I don't understand how you wouldn't at least look at what the Catholic Church is presenting. Now, if you're in some crazy place where you're in like a cult and you literally have no access to the internet, okay, that might be some discussion you could have. But in general, there's very few people that could not at least look up what the Catholic Church is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. I do want to address this question. I don't know why this question is here. Yes, I'm Catholic. I've been a Catholic since my baptism at basically like a couple months old. So yeah, been Catholic my whole life. We have somebody saying they love, I'm assuming this means John Paul II, I'm assuming. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my shirt has St. John Paul II on it. It's actually from Kanye West.
Is it really? That shirt?
Yeah, it's Kanye West. It's a pretty cool shirt. It has his face on it. It says Juan Pablo II. It's pretty comfy. It's a little sweater. My friend got it for me for my birthday. I like it.
That's awesome. Do you like Kanye's music?
Yeah. I would say I'm a fan, but it really not a super fan of any sort. Like I will, if I hear a Kanye song on, I will, enjoy it, but it's not something like I'm listening to Kanye every day. I'm not like a Swiftie for Kanye.
I'm trying to remember. So like our age gap is about a decade, I think. Like you're what, 23, 24? 24. Yeah. So I'm like 9-ish years. Dude, Kanye was very different when I was in high school than when you were in high school. I mean, I think he was putting out his Jesus album, right?
Yeah, Jesus album happened senior year for me.
Really? Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember all of that. I remember us being super excited because I was one of the types where I never really liked, I would say I listened to, your average sort of music that a sort of suburban white guy in a white community would listen to. So it would be rap. But I would listen to it with my friends and stuff like that. And, I was in the church pretty often. And, it was one of those things where they'd try to introduce you to like Christian rap, but it was always like really corny and kind of annoying. And, it was just never.
We didn't have Enoch back then,
Yeah, true. It seemed very corny to me. So I never really liked it. But then Kanye came out, and that was just amazing for us. We were listening to rap music from Kanye West about Jesus, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I see a lot of NHHs in the chat. I know what that means, guys. Okay, I'm not stupid.
I like, I like Kanye's recent work.
Actually, Michael Knowles had a really big, I'm not gonna say based. It was not based, but he had a really kind of not crazy take on that song. I was shocked that he was actually reacting to it, considering his occupation and where he works.
Yeah.
But it was actually kind of normal take, like how somebody should take a song like that.
I mean, I don't think that Kanye is a national socialist. I'm not a national socialist. I don't think most people enjoying the song are national socialists.
No.
It's just kind of like an in-your-face song that's just meant to break
Kanye he just hates what people have done to him. Like, I get it, dude. He can't see his kids. I mean, that's crazy. Can you imagine if they took your kids away? That's crazy.
Yeah, especially, you give it to Kim Kardashian. That's just like I'd jump off a bridge. Okay, not really. I wouldn't jump off a bridge. I'd go to hell if I did that, but I
Jeez.
would proverbially jump off a bridge.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've heard a lot of crazy stories about that kind of stuff. Like, do you have any thoughts on how to fix where we're at with this system and like how? I know you're not really a political commentator, but the kind of stuff I see every day, like it makes people not want to get married. And like marriage is one of the greatest things I've ever done.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of it, as much as people like to clown on this, I do really think that um, positions of power where there are legislative reform that are actually able to affect change in those ways are very helpful. And I speak specifically on the marriage issue. I think that definitely ending no fault divorce would be ideal. Although
That's
I
got
don't
to
think
happen.
that's
That has to happen.
yeah. Although I don't think it's realistic. So I think that another proposal would be covenant marriages, where one is able
Mm,
to voluntarily intensify with the protection of the state the type of punishments for the possibility of your wife screwing you over. The full force
yeah.
of the state would come upon her, and she would you wouldn't lose all your money, you wouldn't lose your kids. There'd be equal standing in the courts, stuff like that. So, covenant marriage, I think the criminalization, or at least, and a lot of people are shocked by this, adultery is still criminalized in a lot of states.
Yeah. It's just
So I think that a
nobody will actually
movement,
pursue that in court.
so I think a movement towards increasing the civil and criminal penalties of adultery and other forms of infidelity would be a huge benefit. So I actually do think there are legislative protections which are pushed by charismatic figures who are able to really provide some encouragement for young men would be helpful in resolving those sorts of issues. But a political solution is it can provide, and I think this is something that people forget, is Catholic Action is so multifaceted. I just did a
Yeah.
video on this going over all of the different aspects of Catholic Action. Catholic Action is everything from at the level of your parish to at the level of your nation to even the international community in many ways. So since Catholic Action is multifaceted insofar as the needs and the goods of the person are multifaceted, there needs to be an approach that is like a yes and a sort of both and approach,
Sure.
where you're looking at what are the different integral goods of the human person and how can we cause these to flourish in our society. And for some of these goods, these are political goods and can be brought about by political means. But also, there's approaches that take non-political means as well. So I think that it's idiotic and reductionistic for anybody to say, that politics is the only way of solving these issues, or on the other hand, of saying that politics can have nothing to do with resolving these issues. Both are true, and I think that we need to have a sort of smart lay hierarchy who is in collaboration with the church, figuring out, the sort of helpful solutions to each one of these different problems in Catholic Action, working together, not necessarily being a monistic organization, pretending
Yeah.
as if
Yeah.
we're going to put together an organization, they're going to have a department for this and a department for that, but really a sort of collaboration between a lot of individuals towards the same goal, and also a sort of and this is really weird to put it like this, but also a sort of backing from individuals with some degree of power, some degree of wealth, who just wants to see smart, capable individuals who are out there and collaborating with one another, pursuing these ends for the sake of action. Dedicated lay apostles, and not necessarily people kind of apostoling part time, which I think is a mistake that we ever thought that was going to be a good idea, to have our entire, our entire framework of Catholic Action being built by people who are doing things on the weekends and after work, which those people doing those things, there are places for them, but that's not the only people we need in this. We need people who are just like
Full time, right?
just like the degenerates, the communists, the socialists, the libertarians, all of these figures who are throwing acid upon the foundations of sort of the common good, just like they have people who are doing this full time, spreading their filth and their degeneracy and their debauchery full time. We need lay apostles who are fighting this full time, it makes no sense to, have a fully equipped army going against, a bunch of reservists who do weekend training once a month. It doesn't make any sense.
Fair enough. Yeah. Hey, I do have a comment from somebody, and this is a text, not in the chat. Kyle Whittington wanted to let you know that you're short. That's what he said.
I'm not short.
I'm pretty sure that you and I are pretty close in height, and I'm above 6 foot. So I don't think
I'm
Christian's
6'2".
very short. Yeah, we're about the same height. You can't tell in the selfie I took back in the Creator Conference. What did you think of the Creator Conference since you were there briefly?
No, I really enjoyed it. I like the Creator Conference, and I would suggest anybody out there, if you're a creator listening to this, go to the Catholic Creators Conference next year. It's going to be awesome. I think it's in Steubenville again, right?
Initially it is. Yeah, literally, if Kyle calls you short, it means he likes you. Yeah, there you go. It's like the kids on the playground when some girl likes a guy. Yeah, you're short. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways,
but
Wagner's shorter
yeah.
than
So
Kevin.
Catholic Creators Conference was awesome. It was nice to meet a lot of people in person. I'm not shorter than Kevin. Kevin's like this tall. I've seen pictures of Kevin standing next to people.
Wait, have you guys never actually met?
Kevin and I, no, we haven't met in person.
I know he's going to be in the Trent Horn thing, right? The one down in Texas.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah, good for him. I mean,
yeah,
that's cool. Yeah,
at least one of us will. I'm joking. That was a joke. Okay, that was a joke. I was just joking.
I have to say, one of the coolest things at the Creator Conference was not necessarily. I mean, the conference was cool, but meeting people outside of their normal business stuff, like for example, Joe Heschmeyer, that was super cool. Talking to him, having breakfast and just chatting about the Catholic Church with him was one of the coolest parts of the experience for me, anyways. And I did do an interview. If you want to check it out, it's on my channel. If anybody's watching and interested in that, but it was just interesting. And actually, the funniest thing that I thought was somebody's like, ask him about the JQ. I'm like, why would you ask Joe Heschman? Whatever. Anyway, it's like, why would anybody?
I'll get the inside scoop next time I see Joe. I'll ask him about the JQ and I'll report back to everyone.
It's like just saying the word. He's not Gen Z, guys. He's not going to know what you mean when you say JQ. Okay, he just won't know what that even means. But we did talk a little bit about some of that stuff, and it's interesting to hear people's perspectives outside of their normal working hours and hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, and it is really revealing when you talk to people, and
it seems like a lot of people agree on a lot of things that
they don't have to have the filter. Not specifically talking about Joe.
No, I'm not talking about Joe.
Everything in private that he said.
This is not what we're talking. I'm saying like you get to hear everybody's actual opinions and not just what they put out on the internet. So, actually, the other cool thing about the Creator Conference was the funds they raised for Gaza. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh yeah. So. Yeah, that my appearance on that was kind of funny. I've wanted to go back and clip that section from there, because that was I was just sitting around hanging out, having fun before going into my segment in there. And I had a cigar because we're at Chesterton's and it's a cigar lounge, so I had to have a cigar. And then somebody passes me a second cigar, so I smoked a second cigar. And, they had beer there. I was drinking a few beers. So I'd smoked 2 full cigars, drank a few beers, and hadn't had water in like hours and hours and hours. And I just had no idea where to get water. They didn't have water there. And I had to go on in like 10 minutes. So I thought I was completely screwed. And, Amber Rose right there, religious hippie. She's right there. And I was like, I need water. And she's like, I got you. She actually got me a cup of water. So she gave a cup of water to me. If you give a cup of water to a man before he goes on to the Gaza stream after not drinking water for hours, the reward will be great for her. But yeah, that was a fun experience. I really liked the fact that it was super laid back. And, I think that, everybody did very well. And it was a very entertaining sort of night for the people who were watching.
Yeah, there was actually some of the biggest donators were in-name Groypers, which is
Eurogroyper was the top donor.
Didn't he drop like almost like I mean, it was a ton of money. I don't.
It was like thousands of dollars. Yeah. It was Eurogroyper
dropping like
$5,000. They had to Thursday had to thank him at the end of the stream. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was some cool people. I mean, like the stream was awesome. I think that's something they should definitely continue going forward. Do you have any I guess advice for people about the Catholic Creators Conference if they're interested or on the fence?
I mean, You should just come out because you just have fun. Like, it's a good time. You get to hang out with people. It's not super boring. I wasn't bored during it at all. And you get to meet me. If you're watching this, I'm sure you're at least semi interested in me. So you get to meet me if you're there. So
Christian Wagner confirmed next year at the Creator
have
Conference.
fun, hang out. You can buy me a beer. Everyone can buy me a beer. We'll get like a massive case just for my hotel room. It'll be awesome. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you get to learn a lot from other people. You get to ask advice. That was another thing is there was sort of like cool thing where there was certain people that I had that I met, and they were wondering about like, how do you do this? Like, what is your advice for this? This is what I'm sort of like working through in my own sort of journey. Like, did you experience the same thing? It really helps out for people who are interested, and even if you don't have a channel yet, you want to have a channel in the future, it's good to go to something like this.
Yeah, and they've expanded the applicants. I think it's up to like 300 now.
Really?
So,
I haven't
so
applied
people are
yet.
interested.
Kyle, we need to I need to get on that. I need to remember to do that, or else I'm going to be kicked out of the creator conference.
Christian goes to apply. Some rando starting a channel called Catholic Groiper gets in before him. He's like, dang it.
I know it'll be over if that happens.
Wagner having like 20 collations at the conference.
I did. That's why we can't have the conference during Lent. It would be fruitful in a certain way, but in another way, it'd be very sad.
Did you make the website with the cigar smoke video, or is that a different video that I saw? There was a video of you blowing smoke at the camera. I don't remember if that was actually on the creator website or not.
Is it?
It might be. I'll have to ask Kyle about that one. I thought
that'd be hilarious. I forget to apply and it's too late.
And you're on the actual website. That would be amazing. Okay, question. We got about 5 minutes till we're calling it quits here. What are some of your favorite Catholic content creators to recommend to people to watch besides Crash Canon? Because obviously, I know you've been on Avoiding Babylon.
I'm so bad on this.
You've been on the Avoiding Babylon channel quite a few times.
Yeah. I'm very bad with this because I don't really watch much Catholic content.
That doesn't surprise me.
I almost never, like, if I'm watching a YouTube video, it's one of those things is if I'm watching a YouTube video, I'm usually watching something in history. I really like history YouTube videos. I'm watching something of that nature. I'm not really watching, or maybe I'm watching a political stream. I'm not really watching religious content. It's kind of your off time and you don't want to talk shop.
He doesn't want to tell everybody that his favorite channel is Religious Hippie.
Yeah. I'm stalling right now not to tell anybody that, but I would say I appreciate definitely Kevin Fernandez since AD.
Yeah, I was gonna say since
he's
AD
pretty
33.
awesome. And our good boy DoorDash Thomist, now known as Broke Thomist, after the sad experience with his car.
That was nuts.
Yeah, pray for his car, but yeah, Broke Thomist and since 33 AD, they're pretty cool and they're friends of mine. So supporting them would be awesome. I'm trying to think of who else, because I really, to be honest, Thomistic Institute. Thomistic Institute, Aquinas 101. That's a really good series. I think it's really helpful for a lot of people that I've met. So yeah, I guess those would be like 3 recommendations.
We do have one more super chat here right at the end here. Maybe we should at least address it.
Christian should do a video / refutation of the broke Leonine scholastic slander. It's honestly annoying. Okay, so there are certain things in this world that I have learned that are not apt to be refuted, but only to be mocked or ignored. Because there's certain things that, there's certain positions that people hold to that, they hold to the position because they've studied the issue and they just came to a different opinion than me. And, those are maybe apt for refutation, for discussion, those different things. And you can have a really fruitful interaction with those. But then it just comes to those other positions where that if somebody spent 5 minutes looking into it, that they would not come to this conclusion. And they literally have come to this through sheer intellectual laziness or maybe intellectual temerity. And with those issues, you just point and laugh, or you just ignore because they're just not worth talking to. It's a waste of time. So when people are slandering Leonine scholastics all the time, or they're slandering Baroque scholastics all the time, they don't sort of have a substantive point that has shown that they've actually dove into the topic. You just ignore them or laugh at them. I don't think it's worth making a video about it.
Here you go. We got a suggestion for a Thomas name. Thomas the Tank Engine. Oh no. I think Christian just completely froze on me. Well, on that note, guys, I don't know if he's coming back. What happened there? Let's see. Rip.
I know. I think I'm back now.
Oh, you're back.
You or was that me?
I think you dipped. You dropped. I think it was you.
Okay, but I'm back now.
Okay, you it's funny. It's like Thomas the Tank Engine. We have a suggestion for a new Thomist, and then you just completely went frozen. It's like,
yeah,
oh, no.
I died of cringe.
Yeah, we got the RIP. Okay, I just wanted to say, since we're coming up on the time, you said you're going to turn into a pumpkin. You know, the Cinderella reference. I got kids, so Cinderella's fine. But I just wanted to thank you for coming on and playing, we'll say, a very gentlemanly game of pool in the Steubenville Conference with me and Max.
Yeah, I know. I lost that game of pool. It was tragic.
The whole thing was tragic. I mean, we had a crowd of people watching us just fail at pool. It was, if you want to see people play pool and do very poorly, come to the Steubenville Conference.
True.
Yeah. Although I heard the basement is shut down for right now. Like, I really hope they get that figured out before the next Steubenville Conference, because that basement was cool.
Absolutely.
All right. So you guys heard it here first. Christian Wagner, Creator Conference 2026. Definitely got to go to see your favorite Thomist. And if you're not going, then you're probably not a creator. So I guess that's it.
Exactly.
On that note, do you have anything you want to sign off with?
No. I hope that everybody has a good Thanksgiving. And yeah, I have if anybody's interested, I got some stuff coming out tomorrow morning and throughout the weekend. So if you got long car drives or anything like that, then this will be your privileged place. And subscribe to Crash Canon.
Yes, subscribe to Crash Canon. I'm almost ready to enable super chats. I really appreciate the shout out there, Christian. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna make them so mad right now. I'm gonna force them to drive to your channel by turning this into members only right now.
Oh man. On that note, yeah, definitely got to subscribe over here to watch the stream again. So, all right, like I said, it's 10 o'clock. Christian's turning into a pumpkin. I'm going to end this stream now. So if y'all want to see the next stream, I think I've got no, my next one's on Monday. So subscribe and check us out. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.